to another edition of the Zoom with Our Feet podcast, the pod about learning media production. With me, your host, TMac, professional photographer, videographer, and teacher. If careers had doppelgangers, this veteran freelance cameraman and teacher and I are twins. On this episode of the ZoomPod, Nate Schick joins me to talk about his TV journey and the joy he now gets from his students in his video lab. Sound familiar? Our guest speaker is in the photo lab. Let's talk to a pro. Nate Schick, welcome to the Zoom with Our Feet podcast. How are you?
Hello, T-Mac. I am great. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. It is so great to see you.
You as well. It's been a while. It's been a minute since we got to chat a little bit, so it's really good to catch up.
Yeah, Browns games.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a minute. So you and I have similar career arcs with industry to the classroom. So I want to, I really want to get into that part. So let's start with the broadcasting part. How did your journey in broadcasting start?
So we'll go back to my bachelor degree, Kent State days. I went to Kent State and graduated in 2001. Kent State, right? Another fellow Kent Stater. Always good to see. And I think it was 2001 when I graduated with my bachelor's degree. And my major at the time was called electronic media production. And basically what that meant was it was the archaic version of what I teach now: video editing, Photoshop, some writing, some journalism writing, a little bit mixed in. So it was kind of like a coverall to the production industry. I really liked the program because it was more technical, and which is what, like, I had a creative mind, I felt like, and I wanted to do behind the scenes things, not in front of the camera. So it was a very good fit. So that's where I started. I started at Kent State in '98 and went on from there and got my bachelor's degree in 2001. So like I said, it was great. But at that time, it felt like, I remember it's so much different than what it is now. And I went right from Kent State and jumped. So the luxury that I had, I'm going to rewind a little bit. My summer job was, I worked maintenance at a golf course that my uncle and all of my uncle's sons basically worked there. My uncle was a superintendent and head of the grounds, and I got a job there. And ironically, there was an ESPN golf tournament that was there. It was called the Giant Eagle LPGA Classic. Actually, before that, it was called the Farmore LPGA Classic. And so while that was there in the summers, even the summers that I was in high school, I feel like, I can't remember that well back, but I can't remember what year it started, but I remember the TV trucks pulling in back in the back of the golf course, and I was immediately intrigued. And I knew I wanted to do something in TV my whole life growing up. But early on, like every kid, I grew up watching the 1980s Cubs, and Harry Carey and Steve Stone I'd watch on WGN every day because it was the only cable channel and the only baseball game we got. So I became a Cubs fan. Wanted to be an announcer. I wanted to be Harry Carey, and I wanted to be Steve Stone, like every sports, kid at the time probably. And I realized that, going through high school stuff, I didn't really want to be on camera. I didn't really want to be in front of the camera because I like the creative aspect a little bit more. So, so that being said, these TV trucks pulled in during the summer for this golf tournament. And again, I wasn't even in college yet. And I started, I remember carrying around a microphone. I went back there and I said, "Hey, can I help out? I want to work, whatever. I'll do anything." And so they hired me then as I believe I was a runner from the beginning, which is basically entry level, meaning I'm going to get coffee. I'm literally running to the store to get a tape. I'm going to get iced tea because someone needs iced tea. I'm going to get sunscreen because someone got sunburn. Okay, so that's literally what I'm doing as a runner, um, which was great. I didn't care. Didn't even need to pay me. They did, I think, but I just loved being around it. So fast forward a couple years, I did this every summer, and then I didn't really make any contacts there, but I kind of fell in love with being at a remote TV on a remote TV truck, if that makes sense, right? Because it's a little
The idea of it.
correct. The idea of it really intrigued me, I guess, knowing that that truck pulls in, parks, everything in the guts of that truck, the millions of dollars of equipment in that truck, makes a TV show, and that was very intriguing to me, and I loved that. I instantly became intrigued with it. So. Um, I took that knowledge through my college years, and obviously went through college and got a lot of great hands-on experience while I was at Kent. Um, I, I took all that knowledge. I ended up doing. I found a really good contact, and to be honest with you, it wasn't through Kent State at all. I basically kept a contact from the ESPN TV crew that I would work with. Somebody at that contact of the crew that was there got me in contact with ESPN Regional, which was in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. So I ended up doing my internship down there in Charlotte. I moved to Charlotte and I made a lot of really good contacts there. And in 2001, I left, I graduated and pretty much jumped right out on the ESPN Golf Tour as a utility. So, and there was a handful of us that basically traveled tournament to tournament. And we did the same thing that uh, as that truck that pulled in to Avalon Lakes Golf Course in Warren, Ohio, did for those years at the Giant Eagle or Farmore LPGA Classic. So it was pretty cool how that basically got me into it. You know, my summer job with my uncle, raking traps and cutting grass, that got me into TV basically. So really, small world, cool story though. How it kind of, you know,
Was that mini tour,
no,
LPGA?
it was LPGA. It was
It
LPGA,
was.
and I remember at the time. Have you ever worked that event? Do you remember ever working that event?
I I think I did a
I
couple
think you
Farm
did too.
Wars.
I think you did too, because I remember looking back. I was trying to think back. It was it was at Avalon for a few years, and then it went over to Squaw Creek for a couple years too, right around the corner. So it was in our area for a little while, and it was a really really great event. Um, so I basically jumped on the golf tour then and became a utility and was traveling around with that ESPN golf tour. They didn't do tournaments every weekend, but it was they did them. I don't know, 3 out of the 4 weekends a month probably back then. I mean, you would probably remember better than me how many. There was a lot of ESPN events back then, especially LPGA depending on what season you're in. Um,
So from utility, um, what's nice about that is that you're there. Now you're starting to meet everybody. If you're doing it right, you're networking. So now you meet all them crazy audio guys, and you meet all the camera guys, and you meet the replay ops just by being in the in the arena, if you will.
yeah,
What um, what made you gravitate to camera?
um, really good question. Camera was always something that I passioned. I love the post production editing part too, but I feel like exactly. I feel like it's because uh, I love the creative portion of it. Like I can separate myself from other people, by the decisions I make with my lens and with my lens and my focus and zoom, and I love that part of it. And I basically this many years later, and I still love that part of it. So, um, so then I at the time I really didn't. I knew I wanted to shoot, but I wasn't 100% sold on the fact that that's all I wanted to do. So at the time when I started on that golf tour after college, I would do anything, and like basically that's what utilities did. I would do anything anybody said, but I'd be the first person to jump out there and go with the handheld guy to help them on their interviews on the driving range. I'd be the first person to say, to say, hey, I'm gonna stay back from lunch, and I'm gonna go up on this camera, and I'm gonna do hole in one watch just to practice shooting. Backswing ball out, backswing ball out, and I would literally follow golf balls for the entire hour and a half lunch break. And eventually, people notice that, and or you're very, or people are eventually going to notice. But and that's where I thank you for, because I remember the one day in camera 101, freelance shooter 101, mindset here is don't ever just jump on somebody's camera and start shooting. Learn that probably the hard way. But so you always ask, like, hey, because everybody has their configurations different, right? Their handles are all different. Their zoom focus locations are all different. The tension
You're
rooms
like
are all different.
you're like 5 inches taller than me. The
Correct. The
way
height.
I would set up my camera,
Correct.
or actually, the way you would set up your camera, I'd have to stand on the lens box.
Right. That's correct. Yeah. So height's a big difference. So, and that's why you couldn't just jump and start making adjustments. And to be honest with you, this is kind of an interesting, ironic part of the story is that helped me be what's the best? I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. That helped me not be such a picky shooter. Does that make sense? I,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways I can get comfortable with the handles, right? So some equipment on trucks is better than other equipment on other trucks, and you got to be able to adapt, right? Sometimes you got to use duct or gaff tape just to get anything to work as far as the handles, because sometimes the locks aren't tight. So um, being able to shoot on other people's cameras, yours is an example compared to someone who's a little bit taller. They're all different, right? The heights are different, the adjustments are different. So it allowed me to become a better shooter because I made adjustments every time I stepped on a camera, because I'm not going to change your configurations. Does that make sense? Because you're letting me be there, you're letting me use your camera, and you know, I'm basically renting it for the hour to practice. That's exactly what I was doing. So, but it was well worth it for me because it was the only way I could get time and practice.
Yeah, it is difficult sometimes to explain to people that while you go to school, there is no school for that, um, what do I want to call, subset of a subset in TV.
Yeah.
So there's TV sports and all the ones that would come to mind immediately.
Yep.
But as soon as arrive at golf and balls in the air, you're talking a different skill set behind the
Much different
camera.
than anything you've ever done, probably. Yeah. Yep.
Set plays in football or baseball or it's obviously not as fast as hockey,
Right.
but a ball in the air is not an easy thing
No.
to master, and practice is the key. It's funny you talked about the versatility, because if I go all the way around to the very end of my career, I got asked. Um, I was really, I was already teaching, and I didn't want to just do a regular camera. So my circle was, um, I'm wily enough to be able to walk up anybody's tower and run their camera.
Yeah.
So I volunteered to do relief.
Yeah.
So for the last 4 or 5 years, when I was basically just down to golf shows in the summer,
Yeah.
a couple locals, maybe the Open, whatever it might be, um, the networks finally got it that if you're going to have 30 some manned cameras, you're going to need relief.
Yep.
And so, you know, and you'll appreciate this. I brought the teachers organizational thing to it, and it's like, no, there's no 2 hour breaks, boys. You get a half hour, and I come around twice.
Right. Right.
Huh? You with me?
Yeah.
And I used to cling my ring on the bottom of the scaffolding, and they were all like Pavlov's dog. They would
Then they
peek
come
over the
running up.
side. Yeah, but it was a great gig for me. I
Yeah,
didn't
that
have
is a
to
good one.
worry about assignments. I'd get
Yeah.
up there and kind of go, okay, handles up. I got it. Handles,
Yeah.
whatever. And, um, you know, you, you, you specifically referenced that, and it's true
Hmm.
about the sort of comfort and ergonomics of it,
Yeah.
because that travel is pretty serious. I mean, at the top of the arc, I'm squatting.
Oh, you are. You're basically your butt's at
And,
your heels. You
and
know.
then depending on the topography, I may have it all the way up with the viewfinder pointed down.
Yep.
It's a crazy travel. I always tell people, don't watch the guy who's
Yeah.
covering that shot when
Yep.
I take people to tournaments. All right, let's watch. I can tell what's happening just by watching him. They
Yep.
haven't hit yet. They haven't hit yet. Lens starts. I go, ball's in the air.
Yep.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So, how long did you? How long were you a gypsy?
So I did that for almost 3 years, two and a half years, I think. So, what's cool about the ESPN Golf Tour when we jumped on was when I jumped on was they had this position at the time called utility camera, and what it was for the people who had goals of certain things, like who had goals to be on camera, they would do what basically what they would do was they would say, all right, you're going to be utility through the week. One of you, because there was multiple of us on the show, one of you are going to be on camera for the weekend. Okay, so that was most of the time it was on a hard camera, which is great. That's where I wanted to start. It's what I've been practicing. So one out of every two or three events, I was able to run camera, and what that did was it allowed me to stay interested in it. It allowed me to improve on shooting for one, um, but it kept my roots at the utility level too because I was still learning every aspect of the truck. I was still trying to learn everything, and I really liked it because it gave not just me, but it gave I gave a shot to. There was a handful of other, three other guys specifically that basically were utility cameras with me. Kurt Miller, who's now a big handheld guy, does a lot of CBS golf. Um, Dave Nardelli, who does audio, he submixes on a Fox show. Really, really good guy. Just saw him at a show 2 weeks ago, so it was really good to see him. And Matt Rossetti, he's an A1 on the Fox B show football NFL package. So um, all of us were basically utility cameras at the time. I feel like Matt wasn't. He knew right away he wanted to go into audio. Dave kind of transitioned that way, and Kurt and I, we knew we wanted to shoot the whole time. So it really, really did help push the four of us into what we wanted to do, and not just to the point where we're stuck. I shouldn't say stuck as utilities because that's kind of I don't want it to sound like it's a degrading term or job, but it, we wanted more than that, if that makes sense. We wanted more than running cables and stuff. We wanted more money.
Freelance, uh, freelance is a treadmill,
Yeah.
and if you don't pay attention, you will find yourself pigeonholed, and then it's really hard to break out of that because they hire you for that. They're comfortable with that. They know you can do
You're
that,
you're 100% right.
and you then are suddenly like, well, wait a minute, maybe I want to do X or Y. So it's great to hear of your group, your cohort. Huh?
It's a good one.
Um,
Way to reference
went
teaching into
couple of
freelance. Yeah.
audio guys, couple of camera guys. Um, so when did education enter the picture, and how did you start to think about that transition?
So that's where it starts to get real fun. So toward the end, it was probably 2002 or three ish. I met a female that I wanted to hang out with a little bit more. And I made the tough decision at that point to stay home for a little while, to take a break from the ESPN golf tour.
Always a girl.
Oh, yeah, always a girl. So it was to the point where it was very, it was kind of one, not one or the other, but it made it hard to leave, I guess, if that made sense. Because
Excuse me, Mr. Schick.
yeah,
Was this a serious girl?
it ended up being who I married and had kids with. So yes, it was serious. So it was serious. We ended up getting married.
That's a yes, sir.
It's
That's
a
a
yes.
yes.
It's a yes for sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. But we ended up getting married, and then so I got off the road, and I got hired at WKBN as a news photographer. So that was kind of my transition into then. I did news photography for 3 or 4 years. I did. I went from news photography to creative services, where I made commercials, shot, edited commercials, and wrote promotional items and everything like that. It was really great.
Promos, baby, promos.
Yeah, and that was a whole different level, honestly, and a whole different. So I went from shooting live sports to the whole news realm, which was apples to oranges when it comes to TV in the production process. Um, and to be honest with you, I still hadn't thought about teaching, which is so funny because at this point I'm 25, 26 years old, and I still hadn't thought about teaching. Um, Something happened at the end of my news photography years. I was on overnights. Our station had gone through a couple owners, and I ended up being on overnights for about 8 months ish, where I was in this position called, I think it was called multimedia journalist or MMJ or one man band or whatever you want to call it. It was right
Oh
in that
yeah,
those. They just
cost
started.
saving measure is what that is.
Correct. It was just when they just started coming into news stations, and it was goofy for me because a lot of some of my coworkers lost their jobs, but they said Nate, do you want? We have this job for you if you want it. You're going to be on overnights. You're going to go out and you're going to write. You're going to produce. You're going to shoot. You're going to edit all your own packages, all your own stories. And I'm like, that sounds like I'm going to be on camera. And they said yes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never been on camera in my life, and I don't, I still don't want to. So I basically did that. I said, okay, let's do it. And it was not, I didn't, I mean, it was fine. I did enjoy it. I still was shooting and it was editing, but it wasn't what I loved to do. So one night in the middle of the winter, I was out on a call. I was out on the road. I had my scanner with me in my news car, and I hear a fire come over the scanner. And so I'm like, well, I'll drive back toward the station. The fire is on the east side of Youngstown. I'll drive by it real quick to see what it is, and then I have to go back to the station to edit anyway because the morning news was starting. So I pull up to this fire, and it is fully engulfed house, like biggest flames you'd ever see. And the fire department just got there, and they were all hustling in and running in. So at the time, I had no idea. And like when you pull up to a fire, you don't know. Most of the time, you don't know if it's vacant, if it's occupied, what it is. If it was already burning, if it was a controlled burn. Most of the time, you don't know what it is. So I roll up there and I grab the camera and I pop out and I start shooting. Dead of winter, cold, snow on the ground, and I start shooting and shooting and shooting. And I remember vividly. Um, I had the camera locked off on the front of the door, and I see this fireman come out, and he comes out like a silhouette and just holding this adult body. And I'm like, oh my god, my knees buckled, and it was the worst thing I've. And I've been on overnights. I'd seen a lot of things, but it was by far the worst thing I'd seen. And long story short, an entire family was in the house and didn't make it out. 6 people, and it was the second. I think to this day it's the second most tragic fire in Youngstown history. I think it was the Crawford family fire. It's still on YouTube, and because I still show my college students. I don't show it in high school because the video is pretty graphic, but to my college students, I show it. It's real. The audio is real. Stan Boney, I remember, voiced it over. I don't know if you know Stan Boney, but Stan's a Youngstown legend. He's as far as news goes, and he voiced it over, and we ended up winning AP awards with it. But my point of telling the story, as sad as I get chills telling it, is I realized I don't want to do news. I can't see this anymore. I got a newborn. My son was newborn at home at the time. My daughter was 3, and I'm like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And that was when I went up to creative services. It was that probably maybe a month ish more, a little bit more later than that. I went up to creative service and started working on promotions. And no one's getting injured at commercial shoots at car dealerships or doing Second Harvest Food Bank promotional items. No, it's the safe way to go, and I loved it. I really loved that portion of it too.
We have a promo background together. I did the same thing at CNN. I uh, was on track to shoot I got an entry level job there. Same sort of thing. Went
Yeah.
uh, was in the edit pool,
Yeah.
tape
Tape
editing
then
back
days,
then,
probably. Yeah.
and um, a job for the editor of the promo department came up, and I thought, oh wow, that's cool, and it totally changed my track. Now I'm doing 10 spots a day, having them to. There was a voiceover news anchor that was really good at voiceovers. He'd come over and track and do all that stuff, and it totally sort of veered my track off from shooting and editing
Yeah.
to more production. Uh, but I submit that I use those skills because of the time frame, storytelling. I honed all of my
Yeah.
storytelling technique as a promo writer and producer and editor because you don't have time.
No.
You have to be economical in your words and in your pictures and all of that stuff. And I still use promo concepts and the things that I learned from that. Um, and we have that together
Yep.
as well. So
Very cool.
where does this transition come about to education?
Now we're closer. Now we're there. So basically, I did this in 2012 was my first year teaching. So somewhere around early 2012, toward the end of the school year, this I someone had reached out to me. Someone who was teaching a program in a high school. I reached out and said, "Hey, have you ever considered teaching?" And I said, "Not really." I had substituted a little bit, like when I was freelancing back in the day, just
I
because
said the same thing.
it was something to do, and it was easy money and got you up out of bed in the mornings. But that was it. Like, as a substitute, most of the time you're not teaching much. You know what I mean? You might have a paper to hand out and you might be able to help a little bit, but most of the time you're not really. I'm not teaching, you know, algebra equations. I can tell you that. Um, so in 2012, someone had reached out to me about this position that was possibly opening up. It happened to be at Ashtabula County Career Technical School, ATEC. They had what they called satellite programs at public high schools around their county. So the program that I was looking into was electronic media, um, basically interactive multimedia was what it was called, interactive multimedia. And there was a teacher leaving at Grand Valley High School, and they said, "Are you interested in it? You should go apply." And what. So process started rolling. I interviewed with the principal first, the principal at Grand Valley, who ultimately wasn't in charge of hiring me, but he had to sign off on me because I'm housed at Grand Valley. I still am to this day. I'm housed. I'm sitting in Grand Valley right now. But I'm paid and employed technically under ATEC, which is the Ashtabula Vocational School. And um,
Their compact, is that the compact in Ashtabula?
it's the ATEC. You mean, is that what you're saying? Is that you asked?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's Ashtabula County Career and Technical School is what the official name is. So it's the same as all other county vocational schools where they have welding and carpentry and masonry and computer, all kinds of different computer programs and nursing and cosmetology. It's a really really big vocational school. But they had something neat that they were doing where they were kind of putting these feeder programs into, not feeder programs, but just different satellite programs in different schools. So I'm employed by ATEC, but I'm housed at Grand Valley, and I have all the thing that's a little bit different and neat though with my class and my program is in a traditional high school program, right? You got 7 periods, 8 periods, whatever you have, and they're going to English for 40 minutes, and then they go to math for 40 minutes, and then they go to social studies and art. Boom, 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 boom. In my program, they're basically in here for 2.5 hours a day, so which works out really good. So they go do their maths, their Englishes. They're still in their home school, only they're going to my room for 2.5 hours to learn how to shoot and edit, basically. Um, More than that too, but that's the more of the gist of it. It's a really neat program. It was a cool opportunity for me, I thought, and here I am, still here.
My experience was similar. Hoover is a comprehensive high school, so it has its own career tech wing.
Okay.
We are a part of the compact that includes, Lake and Glen Oak
Okay.
and Jackson um, in Stark County. So we had kids from other high schools. But it's interesting you talk about the schedules because we were lucky that we were multiple periods. So I had seniors in the morning for 3 periods, and then in the afternoon, I had 1 period classes with. So we were feeding our career course in the afternoons with the
Okay.
underclassmen, I guess,
Yeah.
year one, year two.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then our seniors were with us for 3 periods in the morning.
Okay.
So you have block schedule, but you only have them for your class.
Correct. That's the only thing I teach. So I literally have basically I have 7 periods of interactive multimedia. That's what I have. Yep.
So describe for people, because that's not a traditional pedagogy that people would think of teaching. You're on a block schedule. You're already teaching a essentially a trade.
Mhm.
So describe what it's like to teach strictly in a lab.
Um, it's really a mix of lab time and lecturing time. And to be totally honest, I don't. And it's kind of transitioned over the years, and between COVID and the way kids are different now than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, especially. So
Yes.
teaching styles have to change, and I don't lecture as much. And to be honest with you, a lot of it's either playing on I'm playing video tutorials or I'm making a video tutorial. But a lot of times the way the class is set up is I will either instruct for a period and then the rest of the time is lab time. It's which is and it's not lab time, which is like me just sitting here watching. It's constantly, and you'll know this and agree to this. It's constantly, Mr. Schick, why won't this work? Mr. Schick, my mouse, my right click's not working. Mr. Schick, my is control not working well because this is the Mac and it's command. So there's so many little things that you're going around station to station. Your job never never ends, literally, and um, it's so that's basically how it's set up. Lecture, go over new things, try to tackle a new task, whether we're doing Adobe Premiere or Adobe Photoshop, or our shooting, or working on rule of thirds, or just framing, or camera etiquette, or it could be anything. Do that for an hour, and then the rest of his lab or computer time, or we have a back room studio that we do stuff in. So it's a lot of hands on.
Tell me, what do you think you bring from the industry to your classroom?
Though I just experience and stories are the biggest things that I bring. And like you had mentioned a little bit earlier, like having that promotion background, we are. I don't know that there's any more. There can't be many more versatile people than us out there. And the fact that there's people out there who just shoot, right, who are just freelancers, but they can't. They may not be able to sit down and edit. I mean, there's people that I work with every day on my football packages that I work on. They probably haven't used Adobe Premiere or any nonlinear editing program in 10 years at least. So they just get out of that realm. And like you said, I'm not saying they pigeonhole themselves, but they just haven't had the experience since, where like you and I have had that hands on nonlinear experience. So I love being able to tell stories, and the kids love, like I still shoot a lot of freelance, especially this time of year during football. The kids love my stories. They love, oh, where'd you go this weekend? Where'd you shoot this weekend? What camera were you on this weekend? And those are the things that I love bringing to the table, because it's not just about the X's and O's of editing and the X's and O's of Adobe Premiere. It's about having those kids, understand that there is a future out there for this if you choose it. I work hard, and they see me working hard, and I hope they get that out of it. And I think a lot of them do. Um, but that's the biggest thing, and it's motivating to me. It really is. When I come back on a Monday, I might have traveled all weekend and got my flight might have got in Sunday night at 5, 6 o'clock, and I'm dragging. But when I show up Monday morning and the kids say, "Hey, how did it go this weekend in Denver or whatever, wherever I was," there, and I'm there Monday morning. I love that. That's a good feeling for me. I love the fact they see it, and they realize it, and hopefully it's motivating to them too.
What's your favorite lesson to teach? Do you have them making promos?
We do, yeah, we do promos. That's a really, really good question. My favorite overall, I like Adobe Premiere, I really do. But what kind of brings me down on on teaching Adobe Premiere in general is, like, if we have 15 computers in here, 13 are going to work great, and two I'm going to be wrestling with for a period. You know what I mean? So there's always that one computer that is like real slow today, or
Curse you,
yeah,
technology.
right. I just said it. I said it today and yesterday. I said I want to throw my computer in the parking lot. Because it's it happens. So that being said, I love Photoshop. There's a lot of lessons in Photoshop that I love because it's instant gratification for them. You can see the light bulb go off when they can select subjects out or change. They take a selfie of themselves, and they just get amazed by changing the color of their hoodie in 3 clicks, basically. And those are the things that they can use forever. Whether they go into something media related or not, Photoshop is an easy software that you can buy. There's free versions out there now that you can literally use to make their future kids' graduation or birthday party. So I really do enjoy teaching Photoshop.
When you're teaching, and one of the, I think the other things that people don't even realize about teaching, you have, what's the size of a class for you?
Some periods I'm usually between 10 and 18 in here on any period.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got 18 students, let's say, and you have six that learn one way, six that learn another way, right?
Yep.
And so I don't think that a lot of folks, when they say, anybody could do that, yeah, come on, let's
Right.
spend a day. Let's spend a day. This particular person learns this way. This particular person learns a completely different way,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
How many students have you given oral questions to because their writing skills are not what they need to
Yeah.
be?
Often. Yep.
So I say all that to say one of the biggest challenges for me as a teacher was that differentiation of all the types of learners and how you had to create those labs, knowing that and accommodating for all of that. It wasn't one way.
Correct.
It could be 18 different ways.
Right. Yep. And often it is. I mean, maybe not 18, but it's not every single project is multiple ways. Does that make sense? Like every single lesson, I'm doing multiple ways to make sure that kid understands it. And that's what I mean about going station to station. I might have to say the same exact. I can stand up there. I can stand up here and talk, and explain. But where, like you said, 8 of them are going to get it, but 2 of them are going to be, can I have a question? I have a question. I have a question. And then it's me sitting down with them and going through the same, instead of talking about it, I'm doing the steps for them or with them at their computer, basically. So yeah, it is. It's a constant challenge, and that's just not just in here. That's a challenge that every teacher probably in America has to deal with,
At
especially
every
today.
level.
Yeah, exactly, at every level. Yep.
What is your what moment in TV are you most proud of? Something that you were a part of, big moment that, especially in sports, um, maybe in golf. What was your most proud TV moment?
Probably, I would say most proud would have to be, and I'm only saying it's proud because um, it was so early on in my career. I remember we were in Hawaii for a year, or for one of the years of my early golf days, and we were at this. I was shooting this. It was the Sony Open in Honolulu, and I had a shot where I think it was Ernie Els went up and under a tree and rolled it up onto the green 5 feet. And I happened to be on camera when it was rolling, and I happened to be, and I go to dinner that night, and it was on the top 10 shots on ESPN, or so it was on ESPN. And I remember sitting there eating dinner, having a beverage, and seeing my shot pop up on a TV at a restaurant was definite. It was probably definitely it was a feeling like I've made it. I did it. Like I'm here. Like tears in your eyes. Still just thinking. I can still take you to the bar stool I was sitting at. And that was probably. I'm not saying an overall proudest moment. Proud. I'm proud of what I do in general, but that was like, oh my gosh, like this is real. This is, knowing that thousands and millions of people watching what is coming through your lens is every moment's proud. Honestly, every time I get behind a camera, every moment's proud.
What's your most proud teacher moment?
That's a real, and that's funny too because I feel like I have those all the time because like I love my kids and honestly even like the teachers that I teach with, my coworkers now, whenever I come back from an event, like whenever I shoot freelance, either in the summer or in the fall, where I shoot more football than anything now. But it's like, why do you teach? Why don't you just, go out and shoot again?
So,
And I love
I got that question.
how, and I'm
It's
sure you
so
get it.
funny.
I know all the time. And I'm like, one, it's not as glorious as you think when I'm living out of a suitcase. Two, I love the kids. I truly do love these kids. And like, it's weird to me that they grow up and move on, but I try to keep everything the same here. And every year I have I have a great group of kids, and I love them with all my heart, and I really truly wish them the best. And that's what's so like I mean, pretty much every lesson I feel proud of them. When something catches on. Some are bigger moments than others, obviously, but like our today our morning news, like our morning news broadcast went out to the school and they watched it. And I got some emails from teachers that said, "Oh, this is one of the better ones we've seen produced." I have a really good group of kids. So I brought the kids over and said, "Hey, look what these teachers are saying, how great your broadcast was." That's a proud moment, because they wouldn't have done any of that if I didn't show them how to do it, if I didn't teach them how to do that. So as small as that seems, it's big, and those kids need those attaboys. They need those attagirls, and to keep motivated. So that's, yeah.
The other question I get, and I'm going to ask you because I used to get it early in my teaching career, is which is harder, TV freelance work or teaching?
That's a good one too. They're both challenging in their own aspects, I guess. Physically hard is freelance sports. Physically, mentally hard is being here because every day you're tested. From a kid, every day you're tested uh, some way or another. What your patients are tested. Let's put it that way. Um, so I think they're both challenging in their own ways. I think maybe it's harder to get where I am in the freelance world as far as what I'm shooting and just getting respect and getting your skill level to where you can go out and get hired. Maybe that's a little bit more challenging than teaching, but um, I need it all. I need all of that to be able to teach what I teach. So
It's interesting you frame it that way because I agree that freelancing, TV, golf, as we go subset
yeah,
and drill down, um, my four degenerative discs in my back didn't just happen,
yeah, yep,
right?
yeah,
It was carrying 300 pounds of gear up a
up
golf
scaffolding.
tower and loading trucks and all of that stuff. So totally agree on the physical. But I gotta say, and I always tell this to my teacher colleagues, that teaching is way more emotionally there's more emotional investment in teaching. In 25 plus years of television, I never cried once.
Yeah, you're right.
Zero.
Yep.
And I can bet you if you've taught more than 2 years,
Mhm.
you've cried about something or with somebody
Yep.
or uh, on behalf of someone, right?
Yep.
And people look at me and go, I go, on my worst day in TV doesn't even
Mhm.
come close to uh, a student's parent dies
Yep.
during the day, and the only person he knows to come to is me.
Yeah.
That's not. They didn't teach me that at Kent State's,
Nope. Didn't
you
teach
know,
me that. Can't stand it.
industry
Yep.
to the classroom program.
Correct.
You
Right.
you gotta
Yep.
you gotta wing that one, bro.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I tell people all the time, never cried once about TV,
That's
right?
true.
Never cried when I left TV,
Totally true.
right? But in education, oh, some of this stuff will break your heart.
Yep. And you're
It's
right
the
though.
craziest
After that
gig.
two
And
years.
you will willingly go back into that burning building.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Coming down the home stretch.
Yep.
Um, I end with the same series of questions. And the first is, for me, I sort of started as a photographer, found TV, and then when I became a teacher, I sort of rediscovered my love of photography. So I always tell people that for me, photography is good for the soul. For you, um, tell me how shooting at the levels that at the high levels that you've worked at, how did that make you feel?
It makes me feel accomplished, I guess, if that makes sense. And it's bizarre because, like, when I get behind, it's not so much behind a hard camera. Um, Handheld shooting handheld is probably one of my biggest passions in life, and I feel like it's that way because do you you're almost I almost feel like I am part of the camera. If that makes sense. So when I get behind a viewfinder and close my left eye and get behind a viewfinder, it almost and I kind of attribute it. I compare it to this. Like when you're a little kid and you wear these glasses, you're invisible. That's how I feel when I'm shooting and I'm buried in a viewfinder. Like I'm part of it, and I don't even think about what's going on around me because I need to get a shot. I need to get a good shot, and that's my goal basically. That's and I have that mentality when I shoot everything, honestly, and because I feel like every whether it's a hard camera or handheld camera, you're always looking for that best shot or the shot that one of the other cameras on the show doesn't have, right? Because that's the one that you want that director to see and take it, and like your attaboy or great idea or something along those lines. Because just like I give my attaboys to my students, or attagirls, as shooters, and I'm sure you're the same way. You feed off of attaboys on camera, right? And that's a good director is going to compliment people periodically anyway, and they should because we're human beings, right? It's our human nature to thrive well when we're successful, right? And that's just the reality of it. I don't know if I even answered your question. I'm
You
sorry.
did. No, totally did. So spin your hat around, other career. How does teaching all of what you just described to students make you feel?
How to explain it. It's humbling, I guess, is a term is an okay term because um, them coming into my room for the first time, they have no idea what they're about to do, and the fact that I can whether they're and I always tell them when they're in here whether they're going to go into something TV or media related or not, I'm going to change the way they view the world anyway, right? And it's humbling to me when they walk in here, have no idea how to shoot, have no idea how to edit, no idea how to use Photoshop, and they walk out of here basically some better than others, but being able to make it a television show or a full commercial or a small production, they can do that on their own, and it's humbling to me because coming in they knew zero, going out some know more than others, but going out they can all make something. and it's 100% humbling to me, and I love every aspect of it. And I do have, being at a public high school, I'm not going to have, I'm not going to have 30 of 30 kids go into the real world doing TV, right? I might have two or three every year that go out and do it, and that's fine. But everyone's learning it, and everyone's going to respect it, and I love that part of it. I really do.
Embedded in everything I taught in production was always a larger sense for me that I was teaching media literacy. I was teaching students how to take incoming information, story,
Yep.
commercial, selling, propaganda, all of that. Part of my mission was to teach them how to create stories, but deconstruct stories and deconstruct information
Hmm.
that they're getting from sort of a media literacy standpoint.
Yeah.
And I would tell them, you know what, Spielberg's job's taken.
Yeah. Right.
Um, However, if you can analyze and deconstruct messages, then you're a whole lot better off in whatever you
Yeah.
do.
Absolutely.
All right, last question. They always talk in teaching about hard skills and soft skills. You know um, that soft skills sometimes don't get the run that the hard skills do. I can teach them the Adobe suite all day long, but if they don't have a good attitude and if they don't understand professionalism, so tell me what kind of soft skills you teach your students that may not be on the state standards
Yeah.
and the you know career tech website. What is a guy who's been there and done that in the industry teaching his students?
Respect mainly. Respecting everybody, and respecting that's not necessarily just other teachers, which they're obviously required to, but peers, right? I run this class, not run it, that's a bad term. This class, I promote it to be a mini studio, right? Or a mini production house. And there are no enemies, And so what breaks my heart is arguments, and drama, and I try to nip it, and I feel like I do a pretty good job of not ignoring it, but redirecting it, veering it off so it doesn't become a 1v1. It's a 5v5, which is better, So um, from a teaching standpoint, it's better, and it's easier to manage. Let's put it that way, and easier to become productive from it. But so respect is a big one. Just how to, being a human being, and loving other human beings is huge, and uh, that's, if you can't do that, then you're good luck in life, right? Because, you know, it's a cruel world out there. And I tell the kids that all the time. It's a cruel world, right? And you're going to have to go out and work hard for something. So, and whether it's media related or not, take take the attitude in here and translate it out there, right? Because this is a safe place. That, I guess, for the lack of better terms, this is the place where the kids should want to come and be that person to, that people want to be around. So I try. I mean, it's not always the case, right? But you got to have fun. A lot of times, these kids see us more than they see their parents, right, or relatives, or whoever's at home. And so, like the teachers that are, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about any of the teachers. I'm just saying I love the kids, and I hope they show the same love for me and love for each other because we're all in it for the same reasons, right?
And we're all in it together.
Correct. Yep.
It's how you make stuff
Yep.
in media.
Yep.
Well said. Nate Schick, we're like career
We
doppelgangers.
literally are. We literally are, and it's not.
It's
There's not many of us, my man. There's not many of us.
no, there are a lot of folks that go and speak and do that other stuff,
Yep.
but there's one guy that I know of that was crazy enough to do what I did, which is dive headfirst into K-12 education, dude, and you're it.
Yeah. Do you remember one more thing? Do you remember when we sat in those Kent class? I didn't take the Kent classes with you, but I took the same Kent classes. I remember sitting in there scared. Like I started in the classroom first. And then, oh, by the way, next week you have to go take classes. I'm like, well, what am I going to do the first week? I don't even know how to stand in front of kids, you know? And it was a time of my life where I'm like, what am I doing? But it was the rewarding things I've ever, that schooling, the master's program was the most rewarding classes I've ever taken in my life also.
My transition was made so much easier because we were a multiple teacher program. So
Oh, yeah.
uh, the great Tom Wilson, who founded the program at Hoover, and when all of my uh, higher education teaching was getting pulled out from under me, rescued me again. He was always there as a mentor, um, even before, because districts now have whole programs for mentoring new teachers.
Yeah.
It really wasn't that big when I started, but I had it built into the program because it was a two teacher program.
Okay.
And, you know, like the catcher just kind of, uh, he'd drop a sign and I'd
Yeah.
shake him off and
Right. Yeah.
he'd drop it again
Nope.
and taught me all of the art of teaching and the craft
Yeah.
of teaching. And in teaching, I learned from my mentor that you can see things, pay attention to the little things. Behaviors sometimes mean this or that, or be yourself and be authentic. And no one would have, I would have had to have taken a very long time to come up with those sorts of things. But I had not one, but two, because then we started a broadcast journalism program. So there was a veteran English teacher teaching that. So I
Yeah.
was like, I was in heaven.
Yeah. Good
I
spot.
could
Yeah.
screw up. I could screw up, but I had people to say, all right, let's debrief about this
Yeah.
and maybe don't do that
Right. Right.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I can't thank you enough, Nate Schick,
Thank you, buddy.
for being a part of the project and bringing your multi-talented self to the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and best of luck to you and your podcast too. Great job.
Safe travels.
Thanks, buddy. Good talking to you.
Thanks again to the multi-talented Nate Schick. You can check out his work on all of his social media channels. The Zoom with Our Feet podcast is a production of TV Commando Media. Be sure to take a peek at the blog and other episodes of the ZoomPod at ZoomWithOurFeet.com. The ZoomPod theme is by Novembers and their funky groove, Cloud 10. Until next time, remember, there's no greater joy than teaching and learning.